Dr. Wilson, you explained to us hybrid classes and flipped classes, but could you explain how it might help us through our education?
Absolutely. The idea of a hybrid class and a flipped class, as I've explained it, has a few simple advantages that I explained when I explained why we did it. But there's a much deeper, much more basic educational objective. And this entire class is based on an experimental model that has been tried nationwide. It's a part of a nationwide study on how to improve higher education. Saying that it's an experiment might sound risky, except this is an experiment that's been going on for 10 years. So we have 10 years worth of experience in how to do it. We're still experimenting with a few things around the edges, but the heart of it has already been established as effective educational technology. Most of the students who take this class, if they will simply do the steps outlined in the syllabus, they're going to get a very high grade. That's very unusual for so many people to get high grades. But they're not given the grades, they've earned them because they have achieved student learning outcomes that are outstanding. Why is this so? Well, one way to look at this is to look at a book, The New Science of Learning. This is a short, slender book, a little over 100 pages, that is produced by two professors at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. They're in the medical school at Chapel Hill. And they have collected all of the recent research on neuroscience, on how the brain works, and put it in this slender little book. I actually bought 150 copies of this book and lend it to every student in the class to help them learn. Now, it is the kind of book that might be used in an introductory course on how to go to college and how to learn. And it's useful for that. So if this is a beginning level course, it may have applications beyond this course in other courses people take. But for this particular course, it's especially valuable. It talks about how we learn. Well, we're learning about culture, and culture are ideas we have learned starting when we were very young, even before we remember that we're learning. Between 0 and 5 years of age, we're learning a great deal, but our memory is not intact, so we don't remember what we've learned very well. Not only do we do it, but Homo sapiens, going all the way back 100,000 years, have been learning in the same way. They've been acquiring a culture, and that culture passes on. They're ideas that are passed from one generation to the next that are in common for people who live in a particular area. It's not just what any one person knows, but what any one person knows that matches what other people know. So we're looking at a process of learning new ideas. How do we learn these ideas? Well, there's a lot of things in this book, but relevant for this class, here's what we do. We are first of all learning that we tend to learn not in blocks of time like an hour, a 50-minute class period, or a 75-minute class period. We don't learn in blocks like that. We are learning all the time. So walking to class, we might see a bird we've never seen before, and suddenly we've just learned there's a new bird we didn't know about. That's a simple example, but there's lots of other examples. We simply do not learn in packages like that. In fact, we tend to learn in packages that are much shorter, maybe 5 to 7 minutes, certainly no longer than 15 minutes. So one of the theories underlying this hybrid course is that by giving people video materials outside of class, they can watch as much of it as they can absorb. 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever is relevant for them. That's why my core lectures are never longer than 15 minutes, and often we target 5 to 7 minutes for these videos. We want to learn in short packages, and then we want to rest to absorb what we've learned. Now this also then affects that remaining face-to-face class period. I want to keep those in shorter segments, 5 to 7 minute segments. And here's where I use the eye clickers. The eye clickers, we ask the question, we get the answers, we show everybody what the class as a whole voted on, and then we discuss each individual item. That structures the entire class in segments of 10 or 15 minutes. So in each case, we're learning something, and then we're stopping, we're resting for a minute, shifting to another subject. And that helps learning. It also promotes discussion, and it turns out that discussion, which is a student interactive technique, also helps learning. All of this is discussed, by the way, in the reading list for the course. It's a long reading list, 12 pages long, but if you want to follow up with any of the things I'm saying here, I've covered many of these same issues there. Now let me go back to this book for a minute and give you a couple of highlights. One of the most important highlights comes very late in the book in a section called Mindsets Toward Learning. I think it's actually probably one of the most profound things about it. It says that anyone can learn any subject. People go around saying, well, I'm not very good at math, or, you know, this business about politics or political science, I'm not good at that sort of thing. That's a mistake. It's a mistake to say that because you're discouraging yourself from learning it. It's as if you're putting a mountain in front of your nose. For example, you say, well, I can't do algebra. Okay, well, algebra is what algebra is. So if you say, I can't learn algebra, but you have to learn algebra, you're in a double bind. You have to learn it, but you say you can't learn it. So you trudge up the mountain you've built in front of your nose, and when you get on the other side of the mountain, guess what's there? The algebra that was there to start with. It didn't change. All that changed was your approach to it. So it's critical, I think, for people to recognize that they need a mindset that says they can learn anything. Now, you don't want to learn everything, but if you have to learn something, you say, well, this may take me a little longer, but I can learn it. And that's absolutely true. I think, too, this speaks not just to students, but to teachers. Teachers should be mindful that they not tell students that they're not up to snuff. They ought to have a model not of achievement, but of student learning outcomes, where we measure on the front end and as you measure at the end. And the difference between the two is what's called the delta score. It's how much improvement you show. My whole concept, based on the new science of learning, is to try to promote student learning outcomes by improving performance. Anyone should be able to take a freshman level course and get an A. And I will do everything possible to make that possible. The student still has to do it. You still have to do the work.
Right.
But I'll try to make it as convenient as I can for you to get that work right. Now, let me give you another thing, surprising thing. It's worth thinking about. This has a chapter in it which argues that we should use all of our senses to learn. What does that mean? Well, it means we should use sight and hearing, and smell and taste and touch. Smell? How are you going to smell your way to wisdom? Well, you're not going to smell your way to wisdom by itself, but if you use reading and listening in a context where you have favorable aromas, and perhaps something to taste, and you're touching something, your ability to learn is better. Now that doesn't make it new. That's not a 21st century rediscovery, but it's a rediscovery of something we should have known all along. 100,000 years ago, we had ancestors. We had a great-great-grandfather and a great-great-grandmother, at least that long ago. We had to have them, otherwise we wouldn't be here. And how did they get along? Well, they lived in hunter-gatherers and they hunted their way. So if they wanted to eat in order to live, in order to have children and reproduce, they had to be able to find animals or to find certain plants. That required them to look carefully, listen carefully, smell, taste, touch their way through life. And if we reclaim that, we can do it. So back to how do we learn? Well, with the flipped classroom, we learn through videos. Videos are better than books. They're better than lectures because they combine seeing and hearing in the same thing. If you put that in the context of you're in your dorm room, you're wearing your pajamas, you're comfortable, you're touching the nice, comfy pajamas. You have a cup of coffee, you smell the aroma from the coffee, and every so often you take a sip. Suddenly you're using all 5 senses to give a comfortable experience in which you're likely to learn.
That's a great reference.
You're more ability to learn in that way than anything else. That's why all of the hybrid and flipped classroom things work together. There are other things that are in this book. I'm not going to go through it right now because I'm going to build as we go along. And remember, I'm not using this just to give a how-to-learn freshman level course. I'm actually tying this to the concept of how we learn cultural ideas and how we can modify them or accommodate when we confront people from different cultures.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank
Wilson.
you.